everyone, it's Cindy. Welcome back to Studioloo. I'm here to share a flip through of the Scilla Fairy Journal today from the Fairy Collection. This is a chunky 2-signature journal. It is made from a vintage book that I have hand painted, and it's painted with like iridescent purple and blue paint, and it's got some sparkly fairy dust here on front and back. So I guess I will tell you. Okay, so the front is in the cabinet card style with this large botanical cabinet card and the Scilla Fairy here from Cicely Mary Barker. And I've used 4 bronze brads to just give it a little bit more of a kind of a pop on the cover. On the spine, there are 2 visible bindings there. And at the top, a gold eyelet that holds all these beautiful beads. As the spine dangle, I did not hold back with the beads. There are beautiful semi-precious stones and crystals, Swarovski crystal beads, all sorts of like really fun findings from my collection of beads that I have had for like over a decade from my jewelry making. And yeah, I thought it was a nice way to kind of use some of them because, you know, it's very magical. So on back, as mentioned, we have the fairy dust and a little decoupage here, and it says, immediately all the fairies vanished. And you'll see here, there's lots of lace and fabric and flowers popping out that are stitched down the side. There are some hand-beaded head pin charms here that I've made, and yeah, they kind of hang out, and it's a lot of fun to just kind of look at the side profile of these journals. The closure is using vintage seam binding, and there is an eyelet there that holds on to the strings so they won't get lost. Okay, so let's look inside here. So as with this collection, if you've seen any of the other videos, they all kind of have a similar opening, that I've used a beautiful paper to cover the inside of the book, and then a little tabbed pocket here. Usually, well, with all of them, I've used an authentic 1950s photo that I've edited to add little fairy wings. This time it is this woman and maybe her son in this beautiful bush, and I've given them their wings, and it says Fairy Godmother. And then in here we have a page from a field guide. These are the warblers. And so up front we have some really beautiful locally handmade paper, and I have stitched some flowers down the edge. We have a rusty paper clip holding this postcard, and this is another Barker fairy. This is the Lavender Fairy. And then we have here, this is one of my digitals that I designed. It is a pine cone. It's in my Etsy shop as well, and you can stuff it with all these lovely little bits of ephemera. So there's a little gnome and a mushroom and some leaves, and it's adorned with a squirrel and an acorn, and it has mushrooms and a bunny and some maple seeds, and it is also a pocket to hold on to a couple of things. This is a collage tag that I made with this owl here, and another of the postcards from the Barker fairies. This is the Iris Fairy. And then another Barker fairy here. A song for the Alder Fairy. This is some eco-printed paper with botanicals. Columbine Fairy, Double Daisy. This is some fairy skin fabric. And then we have this little squirrel pocket on this glitzy fairy paper. This is locally made. It's very sparkly and iridescent, and there's different colors of it used throughout this journal series. This is a metallic watercolor painted music paper with a little fairy here. Journal card. And then some stenciling, some leaves, some nice pansy paper. And then we have the Temptation Tarot card from the Fairy Tarot. And this is a little collage journal card. Some blue construction paper that's marbled. This has a fairy here, and it's a collage page. It's from a large book page. And we have this lace here with this little beaded head pin. And it says, A Dance Around the Moon. And then we have more fairies down here and some more fun collage. More eco-printed paper. This is a book page from a fairy book, and it says what fairies most love, and gives you a whole list of things that fairies love. And on this side we have this dragon, more of that marbled paper. This is a pocket made from a book cover by a local Muskoka author about this lovely ginger-haired fairy and her friend, the dragonfly. And then this is a stitch, what did I call these? I forget. They're basically like a yarn sample card. And so I've threaded around them this fun yarn, and these are like, it traps these little bits of ephemera, so little mushrooms, a little pine fairy, and a moth, and an acorn, and it's also a journal card on back. More of that sparkling fairy paper, little washi tape, collage bits. This is a book page that has a poem on it called The Fairies. The cutest frog here peeking out. And this is some paper that's been dyed with cabbage dye. We have a little cluster here of the tree sparrow on tea-dyed paper. This is a lovely Barker fairy on collage book page, and this is another watercolor large journal card with the little painting I've done here and this little fairy. This is another lovely book page with these frames, and I've added a fairy here, and this is a little pocket made from the Cicely Mary Barker Fairyopolis journal. It's very cute. And then this is a little journal card that has this verse on it by Margaret Arndt called My Fairy Friends. This is some of my eco printed paper. A vintage book page from an Enid Blyton book about fairies. We have the cutest frisky lambs here. This is Cicely Mary Barker inspired fabric, and it's a fabric flip on some black walnut dyed paper, a bit of stenciling. This is a page from Teal and Tattered's fairy kit, beautiful paper. Some more stenciling on tea-dyed paper with this lovely purple lace down the side and a beaded head pin. More stenciling of butterflies. And then a collage page. This is a couple little fairy kits here. This is from a vintage ceramics catalog from the 70s. And then this is just a beautiful book page. And this is like a little fabric flip journal card that's been painted in iridescent paint and collaged a little bit. And on back it says Fairy's Tree, and we have this fairy here. And then we have this little peek through hole with a little butterfly in this black walnut dyed paper, and then a Barker fairy, the Song of the Rosehip fairy. This is some Korean handmade paper, Ribwort plantain fairy, the Song of the Sow Thistle fairy, and a little bird here on this cabbage dyed paper. This is a little fairy in a cluster of apple blossoms on this bit of a collaged page. And we're at the center of the first signature now, and this is beautiful fairy art. And then some lace on this cabbage dyed page, bit of stenciling, Sow Thistle fairy, the Song of the Chicory fairy, some sparkly fairy paper on this bit of handmade paper from Korea, and a little leafy glue down, and then another Barker fairy, another here, the Apple fairy. This is more black walnut dyed paper with some vintage woven fabric here, and just some beautiful fairy art from a book here as well with this amazing snail. This is a pocket made from a button card. It's a button card that I made with fairies on it. And inside we have this large page from the Fairyopolis book. So it's like a big piece of stationery. You can write on the back. And it's journal entries about Cicely Mary Barker and her magical adventure on the hunt for fairies. Some stenciling here, some poppy. This is a page from Teal and Tattered, and this is more black walnut dyed paper with a little hedgehog dandelion stamp. Another vintage Enid Blyton book page with sticklebacks. This is another eco printed page with a little cluster made with a fairy here. These are all from rose petals. And then this is a coloring book page pocket from a fairy book, and we have the nasturtium fairy inside with orchis on the back, and a little fairy and a lily here. And a painted page with a bird, dragonfly, and butterfly. It says Dreamland Fairies. And then some, this is tea-dyed paper with some lace down the side. A couple little owls hanging out here. And then just a verse from William Allingham, and this beautiful image of this like mystical kind of spirit with these fairies around. The butterfly's ball with this beautiful toad, or I guess it's a frog actually. He's just kind of a brown frog. Moths and bumblebees, stenciling and washi tape. This is a stargazing tarot card on the fairy paper with another of those local author book page images of the fairy. This is some marbled blue paper. This is a page from a fairy book about celebrations that fairies have and how to please a fairy. Some of my eco-printed paper. You can see some rusty bits there and some botanicals. This is a collage book page. We have a stamp with some cute little mice under a toadstool and a bird and fairies down here. This is hand-dyed batik fabric. More fairies and more of the marbled paper. Another little pocket on some lovely digital page. And this is just a little butterfly tag that's been collaged with vellum wings up top. More pansy paper and stenciling. More fairy paper and this fairy dust fabric. The double daisy fairy, Eyebright. More eco print. The Song of the Silver Birch Fairy. And this is just little fairies here. And this is just a little decorative booklet. It says Creatures of Fairyland and has this beautiful book page. And it opens up. There's a pocket on each side. And it has this lovely floral in back. And this is a little piece of stationery with a Barker Fairy. And the same here with another Barker Fairy. And little bits of, this is from the Fairyopolis Journal. And that's the end of the first signature. Second signature starts with this, the Map of Sussex, and this is from the Fairyopolis book. So this is like where Cicely Mary Barker's adventures took place, where she was looking for the fairies, and you can write on the back of that, and it just clips on here. Little butterfly, Black Medic Fairy, the Song of the Storksbill Fairy. This is some eco-printed paper. This is like a little bit of fabric with some mushrooms here, cabbage-dyed envelope, fairies dancing here, and then inside here we have this tall fairy tag, and that just pops on inside the cabbage-dyed envelope. Some beautiful birds, another fairy on some coffee-dyed paper with a little washi tab. Heliotrope, holly, horse chestnut, iris, kingcup, all from the Flower Fairies book. More marbled paper. Here's some fairy art here. It says, I shall give you the loveliest thing I can think of, that you should always be happy. And then we have a tag here, just clipped on some cabbage dyed paper. Has this bird, some fabric and collage. It just clips on. Stenciling. This is one of my skyline pages with a fairy, mushrooms, and botanicals. Pansies, fairies. And then we have a belly band here with more collaging of mushrooms and bird's nest and fairies on the fairy paper. And inside we have the Jasmine Fairy. This is a postcard. And we have a coloring book page from that local, the local author from the Muskoka region on Zelda and Esmeralda. So you can color that. It's the fairy with her dragonfly friend. Stenciling of birds, and this violet page with some spraying on this side. This is from Teal and Tattered. A little cluster on avocado dyed paper. a little stapled on starched cotton crochet bit of lace. And these are both little pockets that are made from the Fairyopolis book, just journal entries from Cicely Mary Barker. This is a little story about the winter fairy, and on back we have another little verse about fairies, and it is all on this collaged fairy book page. So that just pops in there and sort of gets hugged in those two pockets. We have some avocado dyed paper and some sort of mushrooms and leaves, kind of a fall feel, and this is from the Dreamland Fairies book. This is my sunburst cabbage dyed paper with some lace down the side. Just a little flower here, stenciling. And this is a flip out from a beautiful fairy book, Shirley Barber illustrations. And this is just a little bit of the story from the book and the fairies. It's kind of cute, actually. Then, to her surprise, she glimpsed a procession of fairies winding through the trees. Some were quaint and impish, and others were the most beautiful creatures she had ever seen. She followed them as they made their way deep into the woods. And more eco-printed paper. This is some Wendy Froud art, fairy art, and some stenciling. And on this side, another fairy, more stenciling, cabbage dyed paper, and another postcard of the geranium fairy. This is some vellum with this fun printed pattern, a little fox stamp. This is a beautiful book page from a fairy book, and these are all fairies here. And then this is the second signature, the center. We have this large fairy sitting on this big mushroom, and there's like a fairy ring of fairies all around him. More fairy art, cabbage dyed paper with some lace and a hand beaded head pin. More vellum, a little mushroom stamp, and it says Autumn Fairies. Just beautiful fairy art. And eco printed paper, another Shirley Barber book page with fairies that flips out, more of the story, some flowers, and a stamped thistle. This is a color from a coloring book page about fairies, so you could color that, and it's a pocket. Inside we have a large picture, or a large page from the Fairyopolis book, and there's all sorts of fun stuff. Some fairy dust here. She that pinches country wenches, if they rub not clean thy benches, and with sharper nails remembers when they rake not up their embers. And that is Ben Jonson, A Particular Entertainment at Althorpe. So these are her journal entries while she's on her fairy adventure, and they're really fun to read. This is a painted, hopefully you can see that it's iridescent paint, like it sort of shines in a purpley tone. We have these mermaids here. This is from a mermaid fairy book. Avocado dyed paper with some of my hand dyed batik cotton fabric down the side. Just a little, there we go. Just a little bitty boo of glue. And then this is another Teal and Tattered page. And then a sprayed page here. Violet on the back. Whoops. And the fabric flip of this little fairy. And this is the fairy paper. It says Discover the Flickering World. And we have this squirrel pocket down here. And another coloring book page journal card. Another skyline page that has lovely botanicals up top, cabbage dyed paper, more botanicals. Don't worry, Mrs. Frog's mouth is no larger than yours. It's this little fairy art page. This is some marbled paper, larch, lavender, lilac, lily of the valley, mallow, marigold, coffee dyed paper, some beautiful fairy art, eco printed paper, Jack Go to Bed at Noon, white bindweed fairy, and this is a little collage of the butterfly and washi. And then we have a little freeform pocket with this fairy from a coloring book, and then just this very magical journal card of this deer with these leafy antlers. And at back here we have another pocket in the same paper, and then we have these geese and grebes from a book about birds, and a little pink butterfly, and that can be used as a journaling card or for something else that you'd like to put in the journal. And we've reached the end. So hopefully you enjoyed this journal. I had a lot of fun making it, and I think it turned out really fun. If you are seeing this video, that means that this journal is either already in my Etsy shop or it will be there shortly. I usually get it up within 15 minutes or so of the video posting, so you can find links to all of my shop and everything else that I do down below in the description box. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It was a lot of fun showing you this journal. Have a great day, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye for now.